Nazir, but a woman may not. A man may declare his son a Nazir, but a woman may not declare a son a Nazir. How are the offerings treated? If the son,
okay, that was yesterday's Chazara. We're over here in Hay Base.
why did I put it there? Hey, base? Yes, okay. Oh, I know. If he said the gold dinner that comes up in my hand first shall be sacred, and a silver one came up, Beit Shammai says it is sacred, but Beit Hillel says it is not sacred. If he says the barrel of wine that comes to my hand first shall be sacred, and a barrel of oil came to hand, Beit Shammai says it is sacred, but Beit Hillel says it is not sacred. Someone who vowed to be a Nazir and petitioned a sage to declare it binding, he counts from the time of the vow was made, and if he inquired of a sage permitted it, and he had an animal set aside, he may go out and pasture with the flock. Beit Hillel said to Beit Shammai, do you not admit that here where the consecration is an error that it goes out and pastures with the flock? Beit Shammai said to him, do you not admit that if someone erred and called the 9th the 10th, and the 10th the 9th, and the 11th the 10th, and each is sanctified? Beit Hillel said to them, no, it is the rod that makes it sacred. What if he erred and placed the rod upon the 8th or the 12th?
It's not the rod that makes it sacred.
And I said it is, right?
Yeah.
No, it is. Oh, all right, should we know? Is it the rod that makes it sacred? What if he erred and placed the rod upon the 8th or 12th? Has he perhaps affected anything? Rather, Scripture, which sanctified the 10th, has also sanctified the 9th and the 11th. Someone who vowed to be a Nazir, and when he went to bring his animal, he found that it had been stolen. If he declared himself a Nazir before the animal had been stolen, he's a Nazir. If he declared himself a Nazir after the animal has been stolen, he is not a Nazir. And this error was made by Nachum the Mede. When a group of Nazirim came up from diaspora and found the temple destroyed, Nachum the Mede said to them, if you had known that the temple would be destroyed, would you have vowed to be a Nazirim? They answered him, no. So Nachum released him. But when the matter came before the sages, they said to him, anyone who declared himself a Nazir before the temple was destroyed is a Nazir, and after the temple was destroyed is not a Nazir. Okay.
Okay. Now we start playing games with conditional Naziris. Some people were walking on the road, but see over the next hilltop, they see a shape coming towards them. He says, I'll be a Nazir if that's not Fred. What are you talking about? That's not Fred. I'll be a Nazir if that's not Fred, if that's Fred. Right? Okay, Harani Nazir says the third guy's with them. Well, I'll be a Nazir if one of you two is a Nazir. Okay. I'll be a Nazir if one of you two, in other words, if one of you two for sure is a Nazir, if not, then I'm a Nazir. Okay. She'ein echad mikem Nazir, and another guy says, nah, none of you is a Nazir. Okay, and if any of you is a Nazir, then I'm also a Nazir. Sheshneichem Nazirim. Okay, and they're making all these different. It's not actually important what the things are, but they're basically betting against each other. Okay, and it's like a dare, I bet you the whatever. If I lose my bet, then I'm a Nazir. Okay, shekulchem Nazirim. Another one says, no, all of you are Nazirim. Beis Shammai omrim kulam Nazirim. So again, it's the same sort of thing. They extend their machlokes about hekdesh taos even to these bets on Naziris, where Beis Shammai is saying, "I forget about you. You're Nazirim." Excuse me. Because why? Because Beis Shammai hold that Naziris b'taos is still a Naziris. So if he makes his Naziris and it's based on a mistake, then he's still a Nazir, right? Because each one thinks for sure that they're going to be right, and they're kind of making a bet, right? Against the Naziris, and say, okay, but if you took on your Naziris in error, then you're still a Nazir, says Beis Shammai. Anyone who's a Nazir is someone who basically loses his bet. It's interesting they use Shelo Niskaima Devarav. Really, technically is saying Mishin Niskaima Devarav, that if his condition came right, that he's going to be a Nazir, then he'll be a Nazir. But I think the Mishnah phrases it this way because it was kind of like taking a bet, and if you lose your bet, then you become a Nazir. Rabbi Tarfon Omer Ein Echad Mehem Nazir. So Rabbi Tarfon comes up with an interesting opinion over here. Beis Hillel seems to be intuitively obvious. But Rabbi Tarfon says no, that you can only become a Nazir if it is clear to you at the time that you're making the neder that you're actually going to be a Nazir. Why? He learns it from a pasuk. Ish ki yafli neder lindor neder Nazir. And the Chacham said, no, the Naziris is only for hafla'a, which means Kumar she'en ha-Nazirus chala aladam ela im kein hu mefarish devar ofin barur shemakavel alav Naziris. That his phraseology has to be so totally clear that he's taking on a Naziris, otherwise his Naziris is not even chal. But all of these are they're taking a neder on a safek, and he doesn't know at the time that he makes his neder whether he's actually going to be a Nazir. So therefore, as says Rabbi Tarfon, none of them is a Nazir. Yeah. Obviously, this is the case where the guy walks over the hill and then he turns around and walks away, so they never get to know what the answer was. Okay. Here, Tia. Oh, beg your pardon. That's this Mishnah. That's this Mishnah now. All the guys who were betting before, that's where they actually did meet the guy on the road, and they discover who's Fred, who's not, whether it really is Fred or not. And then all the conditions start coming through according to Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and remember Beis Shammai and Rabbi Tarfon don't really care if they see the guy again, because they say they're all Nazir. So if the guy turns around and they never get to know, ain't no Nazir. So now we never get to know. So ain't no Nazir, and this is the Safek Naziris is the Hakel, and that's kind of what we read in the previous Mishnah. That it's got to be hafla, that he's got to know for sure whether that he is a Nazir and don't, and it's not, and there's no safek about it. Now, when we have the safek situation, here comes Rabbi Shimon. Remember, we saw Rabbi Shimon before in Naziris when his wife miscarried, and he's not sure if the child was a stillborn, if the child was born and then later died, and because of that safek, Rabbi Shimon says, no, you got to keep a Naziris out of safek. So here Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon says, what must he do? He said, Im hayakidvari hareni Nazir chova, v'im lav hareni Nazir nadava. So exactly like he said in the case of the miscarriage. It's he's got to keep a Naziris, but he's got to make a Tanai that this is either if what he said was came out that he was a Nazir, then this is my chova, and if not, then it's just another stam Naziris. Excuse me. Okay, so he sees a koi which we speculate today is most likely a buffalo, but the point of the koi is that it's unclear whether it's a behema or a chaya. And so buffalo actually matches that, it makes the grade over there because it looks very much like a cow, which is a behemoth. But on the other hand, it lives out in the wild, so it's got a lot of characteristics of the chaya. So it's a suffix whether it's a behemoth, suffix whether it's a chaya. Rais a koi v'amar hareini nazir shezeh chaya. This is I'm a Nazir if this isn't a chaya, right? But Hareni Nazir shizo ein a chaya. Or he says I'm a Nazir if this is actually a chaya. He's betting against him. He says shizeh ein a chaya. This is not a chaya, and if I'm wrong, then I'm a Nazir. Hareni Nazir shizeh behema. Hareni Nazir she'ein ze behema. Or they take the converse bet about whether it's a behema or not. Hareni Nazir shizeh chaya u behema. I'm a Nazir if it's a chaya and a behema. Okay, Hareni Nazir she'ein ze lo chaya v'lo behema. It's not a behema, not a chaya. Okay, and he's betting against this with his Naziris. Hareini Nazir, Shechad Mikem Nazir. So all these 4 different people, or 5 or 6 different people are making bets, and one of them comes out and again bets on them collectively and says, I'll be a Nazir if one of you isn't a Nazir. Hareini Nazir Shekulchem Nazirim. I'll be a Nazir if all of you are Nazirim. Harei Kulam Nazirim. Now in this case, there seems to be no argument that all of them are Nazirim. Okay, why? Because according to Beis Shammai, well, that there's no argument because they're all Nazirim, because we saw that with the guy who came over the hill. That Beis Shammai said they're all Nazirim anyway. So why is Beis Hillel coming in as well? So as we learned in the previous Mishnah, according to this is basically a Nazir Safek. Okay, we after das Beis Hillel kulam Nazirim badai. Now, if you recall, in the end of Bikurim, and we're going to learn it again soon, with the koi has got characteristics that are similar both to a chaya and to a behema, and some that are similar neither to a chaya nor to a behema. Okay, they're all these because the koi itself is in a safek matzav, so you could actually say any of these statements accurately. And therefore, even Beis Hillel say that okay, all of these statements could be true, and all of them could be false. So therefore, since the koi has got so many different characteristics, therefore all of the words are miskayim, and every one of them is it becomes a Nazir. Now that actually kind of contradicts my interpretation that they're betting against it, that they're actually betting for it, that they want to be a Nazir and saying, this is a behema, and if it's a behema, I'll be a Nazir. Okay, so so basically what they're saying is that each one of them is their words are miskayim, so therefore they do have an aspect of truth in each of these statements. Or else you could learn it the way I'm saying, that they're betting against it and saying, well, you're wrong. It's not like a behema because a behema you don't have to do kisoy adam, whereas you do have to do kisoy adam. Okay. Anyway, that's on new Mishna for the day. Let's do Chazara.
Beis Hey. If one says I am a Nazir and it is an obligation upon me to provide for a Nazir to shave his head, and his friend heard him and said, it is an obligation upon me to provide for a Nazir to shave his head. If they are clever, they provide for each other to shave, and if not, they must provide for another Nazirim to shave. If he says it is an obligation upon me to provide for the shaving of a half a Nazir, and his friend heard him and said, it is an obligation upon me to provide for the shaving of half a Nazir, this one must provide for the shaving of a complete Nazir, and this one must provide for the shaving of a complete Nazir. These are the words of Reb Meir. Whether they come and say, this one provides half of the sacrifices needed to shave a Nazir, and this one provides half of the sacrifices needed to shave a Nazir. One who says, I am a Nazir when a son will be born to me, and a son was born to him, it is a Nazir. If a daughter or one of the unknown gender or an androgen was born to him, he is not a Nazir. If he said, when I shall see that there will be born to me a child, even if there is born to me a daughter or one of them unknown gender or an androgen, he is a Nazir. Okay. Nadarim.
Yeah.
We have Gimel. What are the Nadarim conditions unavoidably unfulfilled? His friend vowed in order that he eat with him, but he took ill, or his son took ill, or he was held back by a river. These are Nadarim conditions unavoidably unfulfilled. If one makes a neder for murderers, robbers, or illegal tax collectors, that it is truma. Even though it is not truma, they belong to the royal house, even though they do not belong to the royal house. Beit Shammai says one may make a neder, but not an oath. Beis Hillel says, however, even an oath. Beit Shammai says he should not volunteer to make a neder, and Beis Hillel, however, says he may even volunteer. Beit Shammai says only when he is forced to vow. Beis Hillel says, however, even what he is not forced to vow. How is this? They told him, say, Konam, my wife benefiting from me. And he said, Konam, my wife and my children benefiting from me. Beit Shammai says his wife is permitted, but the children are forbidden. Beis Hillel, however, says both are permitted. If a person said, let these saplings be offered if they are not felled, let this cloak be an offering if it is not burnt, and they can be redeemed. These saplings are an offering until they are felled, and this cloak is an offering until it is burnt. They cannot be redeemed. Kagiga. Aleph Dalet. Israel and discharge their obligation with vow offerings, gift offerings of the animal type, and Kohanim fulfill their obligation with sin offerings, guilt offerings, firstborn of animals, and the breast and thigh of shlamim, but not with fowl offerings and not with meal offerings, which is mincha. One who has many that eat but few possess. One who has many that eat but few possessions should bring many shlamim and few olos. One who has many possessions but few that eat should bring many olos and few shlamim. If both possessions and eaters are few, concerning this it is said 1 silver mar and 2 silver mars. If one possession and one eaters are many, concerning this it is said, every man according to his hands giving, according to the blessing Hashem your God has given you. One who did not make the kagiga on the first Yom Tov of the festival may offer the kagiga throughout the festival or on the last day of Yom Tov of the festival. If the festival passed and he did not offer the kagiga, it is no longer his responsibility. Concerning this, it is said, a twisted thing cannot be made straight, and what is not there cannot be numbered. Orla. If meat of the most holy and meat of the lesser holy have been cooked with ordinary meat, they are forbidden to the unclean, but are permitted to the clean.
Hold on, wait.
This one?
I think we're supposed to be on test 9. That's 16. Yeah.
If a piece of flesh of the whole most holy or pigel or nota were cooked with other pieces, they are forbidden to non-priest but permitted to priest. And Reb Shimon permits to non-priest and to priest. And the last is Gimel Aleph. If a garment was dyed with husk of orla, it must be burnt. If it became mixed with others, it must be burnt. So says Reb Meir, but this can come and say it becomes void 1 in 200. And we have para.
No, we've got one more in order. The beged.
Really?
Yeah, we only did 2 so far.
I went backward. Okay. If one dyes the length of a sit with husks of orla and woven into a garment, and it is not known which it is, Rebbeah says the garment must be burnt. But they can come and say it is voided 1 in 200.
Okay.
Para. We'll paraduma right away. Gimel base. If there were courtyards in Jerusalem built on bedrock and beneath them was a hollow because of concern for a grave of the deep, and they would bring pregnant women and they would give birth here and rear the children there, and they would bring oxen with doors on their backs, and the children would sit on top of them with cups of stone in their hands. When they would reach the spring of Shiloach, the children would descend and fill the cups, and they would then ascend and sit on top of the doors. Reb Yossi says from this place, the child would lower the cup and fill it. They came to the Temple Mount and descend beneath the Temple Mount, and its courtyards were as hollow because of concern for a grave of the deep. And at the entrance of the courtyard was installed a jug of katos ashes, and they brought a male sheep and tied a rope between its horns, and they tied the other end of the rope to a stick and wrapped the rope around it and threw the stick into the jug. And they hit the male sheep, which sprang backwards, and he took the ashes and consecrated the water using enough ashes so as to be visible on the surface of the water. Rabbi Yossi says, do not give the Sadducees room to hold sway over us. Rather, he took the ashes from the jug and consecrated the water. They would not prepare a katos by means of a different katos, nor a child by means of his friend, and the children needed to be sprinkled. These are the words of Rabbi Yossi Agili, and Rabbi Akiva says they did not need to be sprinkled. Okay. And last we have Zavacha. We have Beis Hay. If he intended to eat an olive volume of the offering outside and an olive volume tomorrow, or an olive volume tomorrow and an olive volume outside, or if he intended to eat half an olive volume outside in its area and half an olive volume tomorrow, or half an olive volume tomorrow and half an olive volume outside its area, it's invalid. But it bears no charis. Said Rebbe Yehuda, this is the rule. If the intent of the time prescribed preceded the intent of place, it is pigol, and one is liable to charis for it. But if the intent of place of preceded the intent of time to be invalid, but bears no charis. But this is, I'm reading this incorrectly. But if the intent of place preceded the intent of time, it is invalid, but bears no charis. If the plate and the sages say it in either case it is invalid, but bears no charis. And if one intends to eat half an olive volume or to burn upon the altar half an olive's volume, it is invalid because eating.
No, it's valid.
Oh,
Gotcha.
it is valid, but because eating and altar burning are not combined. Last one is, if any disqualified person slaughtered, then slaughter is valid because slaughter is valid when performed by a non-Kohen, by women, by slaves, or by persons who are tameh. Even in regard to the most holy offerings, provided that those who are tameh do not touch the meat. Therefore, they invalidate with intent. If any of these receive the blood for beyond its time or outside its place, if there is yet some lifeblood, a qualified person should again receive blood. Okay.
One more.
You sure?
Yeah.
If a valid person received the blood and handed it to a disqualified person, he should return it to the qualified person. If he received the blood with his right hand and put it on his left, he should return it to his right hand. If he received it in a sacred vessel and poured it into a non-sacred vessel, he should pour it back into a sacred vessel. If it's spilled from the vessel onto the floor and he gathered it up, it's invalid. If he again, I did this right. If he applied to the ramp or not opposite the altar base, or he applied that which should be applied to the lower part of the altar above, or that which should be applied to the upper part below, or he applied that which should be applied within the sanctuary on the outside, or that which should be applied to the outside within it, if there is yet some lifeblood, a qualified person should again receive blood. I find it unusual that if you put it into a non-sacred vessel first, that he'd be able to put it in the sacred vessel afterwards.
No. That you missed the subtlety there. If he first received it in a non-sanctified vessel, then it's puzzled. These are all cases where he first did it the right way. So he received it in a sanctified vessel in his right hand.
Okay.
Okay. And then he transferred it either to his left hand or to a non-sanctified vessel. So whoops, okay. Fix that up, put it back in your right hand. Fix that up, put it back in the sanctified vessel. As long as the initial catching was done with the right hand in a sanctified vessel, you're good. Even if you spilled it on the floor and you can scoop it back up, it's fine. But it must have gone directly into a sanctified vessel initially.
It seems unusual that they would be allowed to do that, though. I don't know.
It's not lechatchila. It's not lechatchila.
Right.
But if you made the mistake, okay, no, go back and fix it up. Whereas some things you cannot fix up.
Yeah.
So, such as if the Kabbalah was done by a non-Kohen, it's possible. You can't just hand it over to a Kohen and say, okay, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. It has to be done by a Kohen with his right hand in a Kli Kodesh.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's possible.
Okay. Thank you. You look tired. I don't mean to put you down, but you should get some sleep. Get some sleep.
Thank you. I just had my mega strong coffee, so that's not going to happen.
Take the day off. I gave that information to my son-in-law. Yeah, I hadn't get to look at it yet because he was on phones all day, but he's going to look at it. I told him all about it. So.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we will.